randomly declare tariffs on every country in the world. And then today, another federal judge in a separate case said basically the same thing. Donald Trump cannot unilaterally tariff countries just because he feels like it. Now, those decisions are on hold tonight, and that is thanks in part to a federal appeals court that agreed to take up the case. But this is still a huge loss for Trump. And there are few issues Trump is fixated on as much as tariffs. And every day the universe is telling him that upending global trade as we know it isn't as easy as he thought it would be. It's hard. And this is not the only issue where Trump is learning that lesson. I mean, who can forget the extremely confident promise about the war in Ukraine that Trump made over and over and over and over again?
I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. It will take me no longer than one day. I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours. 24 hours? 24 hours. Within 24 hours, you watch.
It will be easy. I mean, he repeatedly promised, as you remembered, and you just saw there in all those clips, to end the war in Ukraine in just 24 hours. But here we are, a full 4 months plus into his presidency, and we are still waiting because Vladimir Putin has rebuffed his efforts at every turn. So what does Trump say now?
We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it'll take about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Oh, was I supposed to do that 4 months ago? Yeah, I don't know. This Putin guy is really tapping me along. Give me another 2 weeks. You see, just over 4 months into his second term, Donald Trump is learning a lesson that most actual politicians and public servants learn much earlier in their careers. Governing is hard. It's a lot harder than just posting capitalized rants on Truth Social or spouting off for hours at a campaign rally about nonsense. And Trump isn't the only one learning that lesson right now. I mean, last night we learned that Trump's official White House best friend, his best buddy, Elon Musk, is leaving government behind. It's been quite a dramatic rollout from him. And minutes ago, Trump announced he would be holding a farewell press conference with Musk tomorrow, writing on Truth Social, "This will be his last day, but not really, because he will always be with us, helping all the way." Which kind of makes it sound like Trump sending Elon Musk to live on a farm upstate somewhere. It's kind of weird, that phrasing. But remember, when Musk first entered the Trump administration, he promised a lot of things, including slashing government spending by $2 trillion. Then he quickly lowered his estimate to $1 trillion. And then a few months later said he would cut only $150 billion. Good times, lots to keep up with there. We've been trying our best. And now, as Musk leaves D.C. and his special government role, it's not even clear he accomplished that. I mean, in an interview with the Washington Post, Musk said, quote, "The federal bureaucracy situation is much worse than I realized. I thought there were problems, but it sure is an uphill battle trying to improve things in D.C., to say the least." Yeah, dude, turns out governing is hard. It's a lot harder than just posting on X or dreaming up ways to slash spending without any care for who it impacts while getting high with Joe Rogan, which is literally something, as you can see on the screen, that he did. But everywhere you look in the Trump administration, there is somebody learning the same lesson, that real government and real governing requires hard work. It requires building coalitions. It requires passing legislation. It requires actual policy planning. It requires consulting real experts. It requires building alliances and engaging global partners and much more. And above all, it requires you to trust the dedicated career public servants who literally spend their lives making the government run smoothly. But no one in the MAGA universe came into this job with that mindset. And so now they are all learning this lesson the hard way. Take, for instance, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino. Now, for years, he hosted a podcast where he would criticize the FBI and play a version of an armchair quarterback.
There's no longer any question the FBI conspired to crush people's civil rights. The FBI has not thought any of this through. Here now we're starting to dig into, has the FBI thought this through? Folks, I'm sorry that we're at the point where I have to tell you not to talk to the FBI if you are a Republican. We do not live with a serious law enforcement entity anymore at the FBI.
Tell us what you really think, Dan. It feels very awkward now. But now he's actually in the #2 job at the FBI. He and his boss, Kash Patel, are facing criticism from MAGA world for not exposing the so-called deep state. In other words, Dan Bongino was on the receiving end of some of the same criticism he used to dole out. How is he handling all that pressure, you may be wondering? Well, here he was this morning on Fox News.
I gave up everything for this. I mean, you know, my wife is struggling. If you think we're there for tea and crumpets, well, I mean, Cash is there all day. We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. You know, I'm in there at 7:30, but I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., you know, by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated, divorced. And it's hard.
Whew. There was a lot in there. That guy doesn't seem okay. I'm divorced from my wife. No, wait. I mean, we're separated. No, wait. I mean, I'm staying with a roommate and he won't stop running the faucet. He's talking about Kash Patel, who he shares a wall with. Dan Bongino clearly doesn't seem okay. And there's no question that he is learning that governing can take a toll. It's hard, especially when you're contradicting what you said for years before taking the role. And it turns out being second in command at America's top law enforcement agency is a lot harder than doing a podcast from your basement. Who knew? But maybe the Trump official who's having the hardest time learning this lesson is Trump Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. Now, for years, RFK Jr. has been promoting, as we all know, fringe medical theories, lots of them. And last week, he finally got a chance to try and legitimize those theories with his very own official report on America's health. You may remember this. It was rolled out with a lot of fanfare. They called it the Maddow report and claimed that it would definitively lay out the drivers of chronic illness that Americans face starting with childhood. But today, the news outlet Notice found that the so-called Maddow report is riddled with citation errors. In fact, they found that 7 of the cited sources in the report don't appear to exist at all. Notice even managed to contact several of the real scientists listed as authors on those fake studies. And each of them confirmed to Notice that they had never authored any such paper. One scientist told Notice, quote, "The paper cited is not a real paper that I or my colleagues were involved with." That's pretty direct. And other researchers who were cited in the report said their findings were misrepresented. As one scientist told Notice, quote, "The conclusions in the report are not accurate and the journal reference is incorrect." So it turns out running a vast science-based healthcare bureaucracy is a lot harder than being an eccentric Nepo baby who feeds conspiracy theories to get attention. It's a lot harder. Look, clearly the Trump administration is completely out of its depth on a lot of different fronts right now. And I want you to imagine having to walk into the White House briefing room today and explain all of that. It's not always easy being Caroline Leavitt, but today seemed especially painful to be Caroline Leavitt. So, to help her out a bit, I thought I would answer some of the questions reporters threw at her today. Let's start with Jasmine Wright from Notice.
A Notice investigation found that the Hallmark Maha Commission report that was released last week cites studies that appear to not exist. We know that because, in part, we reached out to some of the listed authors who said that they didn't write the studies cited. So I want to ask, does the White House have confidence that the information coming from HHS can be trusted?
You know, Jasmine, that's a really good and thorough question. I don't usually do this, but I kind of want to see how Caroline answered that one.
Yes, we have complete confidence in Secretary Kennedy and his team at HHS. I understand there were some formatting issues with the Maha report that are being addressed.
I've heard a lot of things in my time, a lot. But formatting issues? Seriously? That's the best you could come up with? That was what was spit out of the system to come up with what she should say about the story? They put out a report that was full of errors, with broken links, and 7 of the sources they cited don't exist at all. And not for nothing, they also just canceled a $600 billion contract to develop an mRNA vaccine for bird flu, while at the same time trying to import ostriches exposed to bird flu to Dr. Oz's ranch. I am not making that up. That is what HHS is up to these days. Okay, I think we can all agree here Caroline's answer wasn't exactly great on that one, but I'm going to take the rest of it from here. All right, Peter Doocy, good to see you, my friend. What do you got today?
So the courts are basically telling you guys they think that the White House's policies, the president's policies, are in some way against the law. So why can't President Trump ask the Republicans that control the House and the Republicans that control the Senate just to make a new law?
Well, Peter, as I often like to say to you, there is a lot to unpack there. I'm just going to start with the fact that judges are only telling the White House that their policies are against the law because, well, their policies are against the law. And the panel on the tariff decision was unanimous and included a judge Trump appointed himself. And on your second point, he absolutely could ask Republicans in Congress to pass a bill implementing sweeping tariffs. If they did that, that would actually be a legal route. But not even a Republican-controlled Congress.
Chào tất cả các bạn đã quay trở lại với kênh Tô Màu của mình. Hôm nay thì mình sẽ hướng dẫn các bạn tô màu một bức tranh về một cô dâu đang bước vào lễ đường nha. Ở đây thì cô dâu tay cầm một hòm pháo hoa. Và trên đầu thì còn có một chiếc khăn giang trắng dài. Đầu tiên thì ở đây thì những bông hoa cẩm tú cầu đang nở rất là đẹp. Đầu tiên thì mình sẽ tô mái tóc của cô gái, nhưng mình sẽ tô màu nâu nha. Tiếp theo đôi bông tai thì mình sẽ lựa chọn tông màu xanh. Rồi, chiếc bông này hai mình sẽ lựa chọn tông màu hồng nha. Rồi, tiếp theo bông hoa này mình sẽ tô màu hồng. Tiếp theo sẽ có màu hồng. Lá thì mình sẽ tô màu xanh. Rồi, tiếp theo ở đây chiếc váy trắng thì là chiếc váy cô dâu. Một chiếc váy trắng nha. Vậy là mình đã tô màu và hoàn thiện xong bức tranh về cô dâu. Thì các bạn có thể tham khảo qua cách tô màu này của mình. Video tô màu đến đây cũng hết. Hẹn gặp lại tất cả các bạn ở các video tô màu tiếp theo nha.